So this is video 10 plus reasons or so why Bernie Sanders beats Donald Trump and why Joe Biden would absolutely just get wrecked. It would be no competition at all. So first reason, Joe Biden's campaign, very low energy. There's no volunteer base. There's no enthusiasm. There's no excitement. There's no movement behind him. And it's been reported that, Joe Biden isn't able to really go out there and campaign vigorously. He's more of a sundowner. He has to have his events early in the day. Which isn't, the biggest thing, but definitely the Biden campaign not having any type of energy or grassroots support or enthusiasm behind him, not very good. He's not gonna, have thousands, if not, hundreds of thousands of people willing to go knock on doors for people like the Bernie Sanders and the Not Me Us movement is willing to do. He doesn't excite young people. He's not going to get young people to turn out to vote, and we obviously need that in order to defeat Donald Trump. So that's reason number one. And the corruption scandal that's looming over Joe Biden and, Hunter Biden with regards to Ukraine and Burisma. I heard some talk earlier today that the Republicans are already talking about opening up more investigations into that. Trump would really play that up in the election. Biden would not have a comeback due to the apparent just shadiness of Joe Biden's son getting paid, what was it, 70 grand a month to sit on this Ukrainian natural gas company board where he had no, obviously, expertise or experience, and he only got it because he was Joe Biden's son. Obviously, that's huge red flag, and Trump would be able to just absolutely pummel Joe Biden in that. Bernie Sanders doesn't have any type of issues, corruption issues or scandals, so he's clean there. So that's the second reason. Number three, and this is kind of the most important one, is that poll after poll shows that Bernie Sanders is the only Democratic candidate who beats Donald Trump. Kind of important if we're talking about the issue of electability, what the polls say, and it says that Bernie Sanders is the only candidate that beats Donald Trump. Biden loses, Warren loses, Bloomberg, when he was in, lost. Same with Buttigieg, same with Klobuchar. So kind of important for really talking about the candidate who has the best chance of beating Donald Trump. The polls show us that Bernie Sanders is that candidate. Reason was this number four, the Iraq War. Bernie Sanders was on the right side of history. He was a vocal opponent and critic of that. Probably, as Noam Chomsky points out, the most horrible foreign policy blunder of the 21st century. It's just horribly devastating to Iraq, to the region. So at least 500,000 Iraqi civilians were killed, 5,000 U.S. servicemen, or service people, I should say, were killed. Trillions of dollars wasted. The power vacuum that was created by taking Saddam out of power led to the creation and formation of ISIS. And Joe Biden was a vocal supporter and proponent of the Iraq War up until 2005 or 2006. That just shows his judgment to be very horrible when it comes to these really important foreign policy issues. And again, foreign policy is one of the areas where the president arguably has the most power and discretion. So on foreign policy, Bernie gets a check mark. Biden, again, flunks out completely. And then let's talk about trade. There hasn't been a horrible trade deal that really shafts the American workers and leads to outsourcing that Joe Biden hasn't supported. He was supportive of NAFTA, which again just really further devastated the manufacturing sector in the United States, led to upwards of 1 million plus jobs, good paying manufacturing jobs being lost as a result of NAFTA. He also supported PNTR, Permanent Normal Trade Relations with China, which again was a good paying job killer here in the U.S. Bernie Sanders has always been on the right side of trade. He, only supports, good quality trade agreements that protect the workers here in the United States, as well as, addresses things like, climate change as well. So, again, Biden fails with regards to trade and trade policy. Bernie Sanders gets a big thumbs up there. And this is so I think that's something that Trump would really hammer away at, is Biden's horrible record on trade. And then the second one would, or one of the third ones that I think Trump would really hammer him about would be Joe Biden vociferously advocating for cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits on the Senate floor multiple times. The Trump team would, probably make some pretty decent ads highlighting how Joe Biden many times advocated for cutting those really important programs. Obviously, that's not to say that Trump doesn't want to do the same thing, but he's not on record on the Senate floor multiple times advocating for these cuts that, supporting these or advocating for these cuts to these programs that really serve and benefit some of the most vulnerable and marginalized groups in our society. Biden's, again, been on record wanting to cut those really important programs, and Bernie Sanders has always, again, been on the right side of history on this issue. He's always advocated for protecting and expanding Social Security, and obviously he wants to pass Medicare for all, so everybody in the U.S. has good, high-quality health care, so we don't have 70,000 people dying each year. We don't have 500,000 people going bankrupt because they don't have, they don't have health care and they get these outrageous medical bills. So again, Bernie just excels on this issue, on the issue of entitlements, as they're sometimes called, and Biden has been very open in the past to wanting to cut those, and Trump would absolutely on the campaign trail and on the debate stage hammer away at that, and Biden would have no comeback. And then just the whole message of Joe Biden's campaign, what is he actually running for? What is his policy positions that are actually going to make the people's lives, the working people's lives, better in this country, in the United States? I can't think of anything. Is a return to normalcy? It's like, no, that's the same type of centrist logic that ended up with Donald Trump getting elected. People want change. People want to hear about how you're going to make their lives better. Joe Biden doesn't offer that. He's basically just running on being Obama's, vice president. And Bernie Sanders is running on a, really amazing policy platform that will drastically improve the lives of working people in the United States, providing things like, high quality health care to everybody, a Green New Deal so we have a inhabitable planet to live on for our generation and for future generations, canceling student loan debt so we don't have, 45 million people just shackled with student loan debt, preventing them from starting a family, from buying a home, from starting a business, all of these things, making college free, funding it through, a tax on Wall Street and the wealthy, so we actually catch up to the rest of the developed world in a lot of these areas. So Bernie's running a platform that, speaks to people's needs and how to improve their lives, like legalizing marijuana on day one, expunging all of those, records for marijuana possession. It's the Not Me Us campaign, and again, there's no type of coherent message coming from Joe Biden, and this relates to another issue. Is Joe Biden is obviously experiencing pretty severe cognitive decline at this point. He's lucky, again, if he can string together a couple of coherent sentences that, people are able to understand. Just last night, one of his Super Tuesday speeches, both his wife and sister were on stage with him. He literally confused, it was his sister for his wife, or his wife for his sister, whatever it was. It was really just, pretty embarrassing. And I mean, he was talking, he was talking about basically at one point how, what is it? Well, anyway, so it's, yeah, his cognitive decline is, just very apparent. I mean, he would just get destroyed by Donald Trump. Again, he's lucky if he can string a couple sentences together that makes sense without talking about corn pop and record players and being at the pool and all of this just really, really weird stuff. And, not to poke fun at it because it's not, something to make light of in a ha joking way, but it's like, this is really fucking serious, and Joe Biden's experiencing some cognitive decline, and this is the candidate that the Democratic establishment wants to put up against Donald Trump. And obviously, not to say that Trump is some genius or, I don't know, just some verbal scholar or whatnot, but he actually does still appear to have most of his mental faculties, and he would be able to just throw these short quips and attacks at Biden. And due to his mental decline at this point, Biden would have no comeback, as opposed to Bernie, who's still, his mind's sharp as a whip, really intelligent and well thought out policy positions. And so Bernie wouldn't have that problem, and Biden would, unfortunately. And then another reason Joe Biden supported this disastrous bankruptcy bill, which really benefited the credit card companies and the banks. And one of the things that made it a lot harder for people with student loans to declare bankruptcy and get rid of the debt that way. So he was known as the senator from MBNA because he was in the pocket of credit card companies, Wall Street, these financial companies. Bernie Sanders has always been, wanting to regulate Wall Street and these financial institutions so that'll end up, screwing over working people and bankrupting the country like they did in 2008, 2009. Joe Biden was on the wrong side of that. And I put down Joe Biden's actually the radical, the crazy one in this race. Bernie Sanders is the moderate. He's the actual centrist if you look from a global perspective, because the things that Bernie Sanders is advocating for are supported by a majority of Americans, like legalizing marijuana, like having a higher tax on the wealthy, like free college, like Medicare for all, like ending the wars, ending the war on drugs. You break it down by all of these different policy measures, and Bernie Sanders stands with the majority of American people. Joe Biden is against that. He's the radical. He's the one who's still okay with, 70 plus thousand people each year going or dying because they don't have health care, and 500,000 plus people going bankrupt because they don't have health care, and 45 million people struggling with student loan debt because of our messed up education system that treats it as a commodity and not a public good. So Joe Biden's the radical. Bernie Sanders is the one with the common sense approach to all of these issues, and the American people, or I should say the people in the United States, are with Bernie by and large in all the issues he supports. And finally, but there's more, Joe Biden was a huge proponent of the racist and draconian war on drugs, as well as the 94 crime bill. He talked about, working and bragging about working with segregationists, that being Joe Biden, and he doesn't even support legalizing marijuana at this point, which is just ridiculous. And again, Bernie Sanders has been on the right side of history, on all those issues. So 10 plus reasons or so why Bernie Sanders would absolutely wouldn't destroy Donald Trump, but he stands a much better chance of beating him than Joe Biden. There's no evidence to support Joe Biden being the electability candidate who can beat Donald Trump. That's Bernie Sanders. Here are 10 plus or so reasons for that, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Peace. Much love.